Hello, hello, hello. Welcome, welcome, welcome. Come in, come in, come in. This is Tamika's Den. I am Tamika. Get on in here, y'all. Get on in here. Kick off your shoes and relax your feet. You are now in the den. So, guys, I wanted to talk to y'all a little bit, okay? A little chit chat. This is my review recap on Killer Sally, the limited series that is on Netflix. Have you been watching? Did you see it? What did you think about it? You know, did you go into this with one perspective and after you seen it, you had another? Or did you just feel like you already knew what happened and that was it? Do you think that what she got was the appropriate time? Because this, you guys, is a story about Sally McNeil and Ray McNeil, who were bodybuilders, Marines, and were married, okay? And we start out this episode, or this series, I should say, the first episode. This is 3 episodes. They're pretty short. It could have been a movie, in my opinion, but they split it into 3. And it is telling us, you know, about this woman that went on trial for her husband's murder. We start with the call. Well, we are hearing her say, I shot my husband, okay? And we are hearing her daughter's chilling screams in the background. Dear Lord, child. What a way to start it off, right? And so we know that she killed him. So this is not a whodunit. What we are wanting to figure out is whether it was premeditated murder or whether it was self-defense, okay? According to her, she says it is self-defense, that this is something where she has been a domestic violence, abuse victim for years, and that she was trying to defend herself. And I will tell you from my perspective, I started out episode 1 feeling one way. When 2 came, I was like, wait a minute now. When 3 came, I was like, I don't know, Sally girl, okay? Just gonna keep it real. There was some things in here that pissed me off. But first and foremost, I do believe she was a victim, and I also believe her kids 110%, okay? And I feel bad for them. I feel like they were the worst victims, the one that got the worst out of all of this. And so, having said that, let's go ahead and get into this daggone series, child. So we started this out. Of course, they gave us the background. If you wasn't familiar with bodybuilding, if you knew nothing about bodybuilding, they gave you a little bit of education on that. Bodybuilding was big back then. I do remember. It started out with a lot of men being into it, and later, of course, the women joined in. I don't know that it's as big now today. It could be. I don't really, hear too much about it. I'm also here about wrestling, which they do talk about that too. So one of the first things we find out from Sally is basically that, of course, this happened 25 years ago. So some things may be hazy. She may not remember every single detail. But, Valentine's Day used to be a good day for her. And later on, not so much, right? And one of the first Valentine's Day we hear about is 1987, when she wins this award in this bodybuilding contest. And she got into bodybuilding basically while she was in the Marine Corps. Okay, that's when she started it all. Now, her and Ray, like I said, was both in the Marines. And apparently he had told a sergeant of hers that he wanted to meet her. She caught his eye, and then she looked at him, honey, and it was lust at first sight. Not love, honey. She said lust, all right? She wanted this bate, okay? It looked good to her. And so they were both into Schwarzenegger really heavy. At one point, even when the daughter's talking, she says how she was telling everybody, like in her mind, Conan the Barbarian was her daddy, all right? And they got married pretty quickly. They got married about 2 months later, right? After meeting each other, moved off the base together, got their own apartment, and started their life together. Now, in the meantime, it was interesting to me to see the dynamic of how the son talked about the situation versus how the daughter talked about the situation, right? Or talked about Ray in general. And that's not to say that it was anything wrong with it, because we as people could be in a situation or have an experience, together, but we have our different views and our different, memories of it. It doesn't have to be exact, right? That's definitely normal. If it was exact, I think I would see more of an issue with that. But I just bring that up because when we hear the son, you could tell the son has a lot of anger still built up, a lot of issues. Not saying it's wrong for him to have it, just observation, right? Whereas the daughter more so seems like she blames herself. She's still very sad. It's not so much anger that's coming off of her, right? And when she talks about Ray, she talks about him and calls him dad. She either says my dad or my stepfather, right? Or my stepdad. And she talks about how there was some good times and how her mother just had her nose wide open over Ray, right? That's one of the first things we hear from her. In terms of the son, the first thing we hear from him is, everybody stared at us. Everybody thought we was weird. He was like, I didn't like that. They always, looked at our parents because of them being bodybuilders and them being different. And then secondly, because of, the interracial marriage and because of the kids being biracial. Now, these two kids, like I said, come from a previous relationship. Ray was their stepfather, but their father was black as well. We find out later on down the line that their father name was Tony, and he also was abusive. So this Sally is coming from abusive relationships, okay? First and foremost. Her parents, okay? We find out later down the line that her mother literally had got kicked in the stomach by her father when she was pregnant with her. The mother leaves her father and gets with a new man who becomes her stepfather. She has 2 kids by him, and this man abuses Sally, there too. So this abuse goes all the way back to her childhood. It goes into her relationships. And I think that plays a big role into what happened as well. Just my opinion, okay? And then she gets into this with Ray, and it's become something where this is like normal, right? This is supposed to happen. This is what you probably think love is, even though we know that it is not. And so basically, like I said, we're getting this background. We see this FIC chairman that's talking. He's talking, of course, about Arnold Schwarzenegger, who was one of the biggest bodybuilders back then in the days before he went on to do, all his movies and everything else he was in, right? And we seeing that they both went in this championship, amateur bodybuilding thing they was in 1990, and that Ray leaves the Marines in 1991 because he's trying to go pro. He's trying to get to that level that Arnold Schwarzenegger is at, all right? And, she still stays in and basically holds them afloat and continues to be in the Marines because they got to have a steady income. When you're trying to get into this pro bodybuilding, it takes a lot of money. It's not money that's necessarily getting paid to you. It's money you got to push out until you get to that stature, and it's not easy. We also meet one of the first black women bodybuilders during that time that won 8 times, and she makes sure to let us know, Arnold only won 7. I said, I know that's right. And basically the point of them showing her was that this was somebody Sally wanted to be like and get to her status. And so, in 1992, they had Joan Goes Gym. They going real hard, and steroids begin. Now, guys, first things that came to my mind as I started this series off, and my first things that I said, hearing, okay, bodybuilders, okay, we gonna have steroids, Marines is probably gonna be some violence because, the reality is that there is a lot of military people, a lot of police. Doesn't have to be, there's not every situation, but it was a lot. And especially through the 70s and the 90s, because they were not getting the proper help and the proper treatment and counseling and all those different things that we have more of today. There was a lot of different instances where situations like that was happening. So just me hearing those words at the very beginning of this series, as it starts with the first episode, that did pop in my head, right? And so yes, we found out that steroids definitely was a factor in here. If you wanted to be in the top 5, more than likely you was using steroids, okay? And so once Ray started using it, which it was a friend of his that got it, and the friend was basically, giving out extra and selling extra, making a profit on it and using it himself as well. Sally then in turn starts to join and starts using it too, okay? Because she was saying it was going to help her do this lifting. Now, Sally was over here making trips to Tijuana to get it after a while, okay? And it was interesting to me that she didn't want to talk about that at all. She was like, that's off limits. I don't want to bring that up. That's bad parenting. That's going to make me look like a bad mom. I said, really? Out of everything we talking about, that's what you think going to make you look like a bad mom, girl? Okay. And they were spending big money on this. And she was the one that was footing the bill because Ray didn't have a job. So basically, she was the breadwinner, all right? And then, of course, that added on stress, right? And so then she got approached to do these wrestling videos, and that kind of gave her the extra money that she needed to help her to be able to do more things. She was getting paid $50 per video, $50 an hour, okay, to do the videos. And so she started getting more wrestling gigs. And there's even one where she has Ray in it and she's lifting him up in the whole 9 yards, okay? And then she got to a point where it was like, let me start my own production while I'm going to be at somebody else's and have them pay me when I could just do my own thing. And so, you know, she really gets big with this, and they showing all these different ones that she did, and one that she even did where she's on the military base and she got her gun. And one of these videos is called Killer Sally. Hint the name of, you know, the series Killer Sally, right? And in 1993, she gets out of the Marines, and she's basically just at this point making money doing the wrestling, right? And her daughter says she always hated the wrestling. She never really liked it. She never really got into it, right? And so we find out that Sally spent like $24,000 on Ray in 1993 between steroids and all the other preparations that, you know, she had to make for him. So I said, girl, now his friend, on the one hand, I thought this was interesting, right? Because we found out from his daughter that one night Ray came in. She basically says that Ray was Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde. One minute he could be the nicest thing you want to know, and the next minute he had his evil side. And she said it was one night he came in covered in blood. She never seen him so scared, so shook, and, you know, in shock. And he basically was telling her to never mention this, you know what I'm saying, night to anybody, right? And one of the friends, which I think that was BJ or DJ, one of the other, I think it was DJ. He says that, yeah, I remember that night. He says they used to work security, and Ray had beat this guy to a pulp. They were scared he had killed him, and the guy had blood coming out his eyes. Later they found out he actually blinded the guy, right? And the cops was called, but the cops apparently didn't do anything. He didn't get arrested or anything like that because they knew him. I said, what? Okay. Now, you know, in the same token, she's talking about all these beatings she's getting from him. He beat her on the regular. He broke her nose. You know, he would choke her. She would feel like he was about to crack her neck and all this stuff, right? And he always took things out on her when he would get angry or something wouldn't go his way, or if he lost a contest and different stuff like that. She reported it to her sergeant, and they took him in but then released him. And he had beat her again, basically saying, you know, you better drop these charges against me, at least according to her, right? And the sergeant was like, well, why the hell did you drop it? And it's like, well, why the hell did you release him? And so, you know, we get this back and forth where we are getting confirmation where his friends are saying, yeah, they used to fight each other. They would get into bad fights. They both could have, you know, be aggressive. They both could get into things. They both was basically toxic and things of that nature, right? And we got the background on her and the fact that she came from an abusive home. And at first I was like, you know, I wish we would have got a little bit more Ray's background. I still feel like we could have got more. But when I watched it the second time, because I did watch it twice, I noticed the second time, which I didn't catch that the first time, that they do mention that Ray basically was given up by his mom, you know, as a baby. And I think he had went to live with an aunt, and he talked about actually going through abuse at the aunt's house. Somebody that she had there staying there with her, abusing him. And so he was coming from an abusive place. She was coming from an abusive place, right? Now, we also see that there's one year where, because her son says, you know, my relationship with Ray was abusive. He said he beat me a lot, especially when my mom wasn't home, right? And he was like, he hated him. He was the devil. Okay, and that's really like, you can't get no stronger than a statement than that, okay? And he said he would spank them all the time, and he would make them choose, and like one would have to watch. And I know that's something that a lot of the old school parents did, okay? And one year, and they actually showed the video for this, like he had got this name tag that said dad. And his reaction to getting the name tag that said dad wasn't just like, oh, well, thank you, I appreciate this, how sweet, my kids is getting me this name tag that says dad. No, he was like, I got this name tag that says dad, so basically that means I have the authority to go get a belt and beat you. And you could see the look on her daughter's face when the camera pans over to her on this home video. That's like, straight up and down fear. Like, really? Wow, that's what you gonna say to the gift I gave you? Like fear and disappointment, right? And she would go over to her friend's house, and her friend would see her with these black eyes. It was like we had two of her friends that was, talking and being interviewed, and we had two of his friends, and apparently it was only this one friend that actually saw it and knew the majority of the things that was happening. The other friend, apparently she wasn't telling her about any of the things that had went down. And even though they had grew up together, that friend didn't seem to know that much about what she would have to endure, besides the fact of hearing the story of her father, hitting her mother in the stomach when she was pregnant with her. So when she found out about, all of this happening, it was more so of a shock to her. They also was asking her in the interview, like, well, did you get the gun because you felt like that was going to be, a weapon for Ray? And she was like, no, he was the weapon. He didn't need a damn weapon. She was like, this was supposedly was a weapon that she already had and that she felt like they could use just in case something happened in the house. But as far as anything with him, he didn't need it. He could kill her with his bare hands, basically, right? And so she also says that he used to sexually assault her, that he would basically take it from her because he felt like if they had sex, that meant she forgave him, right? And that, of course, in the beginning when he first was abusing her, he would bring flowers and candies and cards and write letters, that type of thing, right, to apologize. And then later, of course, after them being married for 8 years, the more shows he did, the more steroids he did, the more beatings and the more worse it got, right? Of course, it never was getting better. It was getting worse. So at this point, she was trying to say that she had plans to leave as soon as she had enough money. And she said she didn't make it because of the incident. Now, that's where she lost me too. I had to watch it a second time because I was saying, how did we get from you telling the kids, yeah, we leaving, we making these plans to leave, get y'all things ready, be prepared, we gonna be out the door and all of this, so you saying, well, it's Valentine's Day and it's my husband, so I figured why not be able to spend time with him, and he not home, so I think it's a bar, I think it was McCabe's that he could have possibly been going to, and I'm gonna get myself together to get ready for that, to go meet him over there and see if he's there. But then he comes home and this argument breaks out, which we don't know to this day what the argument was over. More than likely it was over a woman, because we found out later apparently Ray was cheating, okay, and she used to be out here fighting women over him. So that would be my first guess. But I was confused as to how you was trying to pack up one minute and how you was worried about it being Valentine's Day and spending time with him the next minute. But that wouldn't be that crazy when we think about it, because a lot of abuse victims do, 1 minute I'm leaving, next minute I'm staying. You never know when they really done, when enough is really enough, right? And the one thing that everybody does seem to agree on, whether it's her friends, his friends, or whoever in between, of course, it's easy to like Monday morning quarterback, but it's like, well, I wish she would have left. I wish he would have left, because they both was talking about leaving each other. She talked about leaving, and then according to them, they say he talked about leaving, and that he had found a new love interest, and that they didn't feel he loved her as much as she loved him, and that they would say, like, you better be careful, because she could get real aggressive, she could get real violent, she could be ready to fight, and how would she react if she knew you was leaving, or how would she react if she know you cheating and things of that nature, right? And then on the one hand, his friend was confusing me too, because he wanted to say he was a gentle giant. But you saying he a gentle giant, and in the same breath you saying, yeah, they used to get down, they fights used to be horrible, they used to make me uncomfortable, I would leave, I didn't want to be in the middle of it, I didn't want to be around it, they both was toxic, they both was aggressive. You telling me about how he almost beat a man to death, but then you saying he was a gentle giant. That's not what a gentle giant is, in my opinion. I know quite a few, but nonetheless, I digress. That was kind of contradictory to me. But Supposedly this night when the incident happened, one of the first stories she tells, and also her daughter's like saying she heard the choking, she could hear the choking through the door, and she says, she was banging on the door and trying to get them to stop. And from Sally's perspective, she's saying that he hit her and choked her, right? And that she ran in the bedroom, got the gun, went to the living room, told him to move to get out her way. He said no, and then she shot him, right? And her daughter had saw the second shot, and her son was basically in the room, sleeping. And of course, this wakes him up, and he later is literally having to walk over, Ray's body in the damn hallway where she done covered it up with, a blanket or whatever, right? And he was just happy because he said this hell was over. He said he was relieved. He was basically like, whether he lived or died, he knew that he was never going to beat them again. So just again, the son's reaction to this in comparison with the daughters is completely different, right? Because the daughter's just yelling, screaming, she in shock. Mind you, she done seen this second shot, so now she's traumatized, not only from all the other stuff that they already had to endure, but from seeing this, right? Now, the police took Sally, in one car, took the kids in another car. The daughter saying how she was trying to literally kick out the door, kick out the window. Of course, she didn't want to be separated from her mom, right? And they take Sally in here and they asking her different questions in different ways, how you would expect them to do, right? She doesn't ask for a lawyer. She says she should have asked for a lawyer. She's giving her statement to the police or whatever, right? And she's saying she just wanted to get out the house. Now, this second statement she gives, she tells them that she went to get the gun from the bedroom, and when she came back, he was at the stove cooking chicken. So this where you lose me again, Sally, because I said, wait, before he was in front of the door and you were saying you wanted to leave and he said no. Now we at the stove cooking chicken, and if you look at how the house is set up, then he wasn't in your way. You know what I mean? So this is where, if I'm a juror and I'm hearing this story, I would kind of get skeptical too, because that doesn't mean that you was defending yourself. That doesn't mean that he was attacking you. That doesn't mean that he was in your way. And when she's talking to the police, she's saying that she aimed it at him and she thought he was coming at her, right? Now I know, now he charged at me. She was like, I think at that time he was gonna come after me, so I shot. And then he was coming after me again, so I shot. If we going by what you saying with your own words, that don't sound right. How you, and I get you could black out, you could be lost for a minute. Some of the stuff might be a little muddled with the way that you're thinking, so I'm trying to put that into perspective as well. But there's a big difference from you saying he's beating me and I'm grabbing this gun and I'm shooting him, or he's standing in my way, I'm saying get out my way. Was she planning on leaving and then coming back later for the kids? Because the kids are still supposed to be in their room at this time. Is she trying to go and cool off? Or is she just, supposed to have been saying that she was trying to leave for good? Was he at the door or was he in the kitchen cooking his chicken? Because that's the part that's confusing to me. I'm just going to keep it real with y'all, okay? I started looking like, wait a minute, that's not what you said before. The story is changing. I'm just saying what I'm hearing in the facts, okay? So apparently once she shot him and seen what the damage really was, that's when, I guess she snapped out of it and calls police or whatever, right? And they say, we had you here all this time talking to us, and not once have you asked how he's doing. And she's basically like, well, I did try to ask the other officers. None of them told me nothing. And they're like, well, he died of his injuries, okay? He did not survive. He basically, bled out. And so she was like, crying hysterical once they tell her that or whatever, right? And she says, what's gonna happen now? They said they was gonna put her under arrest, and she asked to see her kids. They said they would work something out for that. This was another heartbreaking moment. That phone call is the first heartbreaking moment, and when these kids come in this interview room, that's the second one. They are crying so hysterical, and her son is just like, Ma, just tell them, let them know, like, he was beating on you. You got these marks. The other cop was telling you that if he was coming after you and you was defending yourself, to tell them that. And she's like, yeah, I did tell them that. I've been honest. I told them everything. Her daughter, on the other hand, is crying and saying I'm so sorry, mom. She's blaming herself. She's saying she gonna be on trial too. Like, that broke my heart. And she was like, no, you not. She was like, I'm just gonna, have to be on trial. And so her son is like saying, well, once the jury hears your story, they gonna let you out. Even if one juror say, they believe you or whatever the case may be. And she's like, we will see. And she's telling them they're gonna have to go to a group home and that they're gonna be going to Pennsylvania, sooner and in a different way than she originally planned. And her daughter just keeps blaming herself, right? And then as they're talking to her in the interview, she even says that she blames herself because she kept trying to get them to stop fighting. And it's like, no child should have to feel like that's her job, or like, you know what I mean? It's her fault that she would be in a position in a way that she would have been able to stop fighting, stop them from fighting. Now, in the meantime, we get introduced to Dan prosecutor Dan Goldstein. I did not like him, y'all. He made me get so sick because he gonna come in, he's this high profile lawyer, worked all these different cases or whatever. And he's saying he looked at the videotape of Sally's interview and immediately said, oh, this ain't no battered woman. She doesn't even look like a battered woman, and she doesn't act like a battered woman. Excuse me, first of all, battered women don't have a look. They don't have one look. There's no such thing as having a look to being abused. There's no such thing as having a look to being depressed. There's no such thing as having a look to be, in pain. There's no such thing as a perfect victim. There's no such thing. Okay, that is a big myth. And yes, men can be abused, women can be abusers, and the opposite way. I can't stand when, one time my girlfriend said to me, oh, I'm so glad I have a boy because that doesn't happen to them. No, it happens to boys, it happens to girls, it can happen either way. But the fact that he automatically, supposedly, because of the way she talked, because of the way her body is built, how could she possibly, be a victim? She trying to sell it and make it seem that way, but it's not. She's strong and she aggressive. I don't care how strong she was. Guess what? Ray was stronger. That does not take away and mean that he was not also an abuser to her. It doesn't also mean that they both probably was just toxic with each other, like they friends were saying over and over and over. And they used to fight each other like cats and daggone dogs. And this particular time when they fought, it went too far. It could have either been Sally dead or it could have been Ray dead. And in this situation, it ended up being Ray dead. One does not discount the other. Two things could be true at the same time. But for you to sit there and be like, oh, she can't be a victim. Excuse me? And then not only was he saying this back in the 90s, which you would kind of understand it a little bit. You would think you would have grown between then and now. No, even with the current update of him, he was still saying the same daggone thing. And that thing made me so sick to my stomach. But moving right along, we also was talking with her lawyer, William Farrell, and he was saying that, Sally was not that Leave It to Beaver mom, right? That wasn't her persona. And he said, he had to tell her not to lift weights. He had to take her shoulder pads out. We trying to get her to talk a certain way. We trying to get her to look a certain way because we don't want people to go by, looking at her and thinking certain things about her. Now, she does get bail because basically they was able to prove that there was court records to show this history of abuse. This ain't something that she was just pulling out of her behind, okay? And she does get supporters from wrestlers, but the bodybuilders basically turned their back on her, right? And even though her parents was originally racist, okay, because the first boyfriend she ever had was in 9th grade, was a black boy, and they was N-word this, N-word that. It was a point where they had disowned her. Of course, like I said, she married the guy Tony, who also was in the Marines, right, which was her kid's father, and he also was abusive. She gets rid of him, divorces him, leaves with the kids, and gets with Ray not too long after that. So all of this is like right behind each other and close behind at that, right? But now, apparently, even though they was alcoholics and they did all this different stuff with Sally when she was growing up, now as grandparents, they step in and take her kids and they actually do a good job with them. And the kids is like, if it wasn't for us going to them, like, we don't know what would have happened, right? So at least that was one good thing that came out of everything, right? And in the meantime, when we see these court records, like I say, it shows the history of abuse, and it also shows that Ray had 5 different kinds of steroids in his system, whereas Sally had one. And the prosecutor does say, we know that roid rage is real, right? This was something that happened with people that took steroids, but he says that's not what Sally used as her defense. At the end of the day, Sally used the defense of being a victim, and he did not see her as a victim, and he was going to prove that she wasn't one. Now, her son talks about one time that one of the neighbors dad, I think he was a mailman or something, had slapped him, and he was like, oh, you have no idea, you gonna get in trouble, right? My mom is all kind of crazy, and when she come home, she kicking your behind. And sure enough, Sally came home, and Sally knocked at that door and was kicking that behind, I can't say I blame her. You hit my damn son, I'm coming after you too. Shoot, I ain't even gonna lie about that, right? But they talk about her being violent over the times that Ray was, cheating or whatever, right? And his friend also, like I said he was scared of what she would do with that situation. So we know that it was a history from her end, and we know it was a history from his end, right? And then we also get to see the lady that he apparently was going to leave her for, Marianne. She was in the daggone, interview room. And she was saying that they loved each other like poetry. And, he had met her 3 years before, this incident happened or whatever. And he was supposed to be leaving to be with her. They were supposed to be oh so in love. And that Sally had called her and said she was going to kick her butt. And then we see Sally in that interview. Sally said, hell yeah, I said I was going to kick her butt. Absolutely I did. You over here messing with my man, and he my man. Yes, I was coming for you. Yes, I told her not to go to judge, the gym no more. She admitted it. She ain't try to act like she didn't say it, right? And his friend said that he really wanted to spend Valentine's Day with the Marianne lady, right? And he says this, of course, is the day that the incident happens, and he had got a call from him that was like telling him to meet him at the house, I guess, after he finished hanging out with Marianne, right? And this is when Sally's putting on the makeup to go see if he's at McCabe's. And DJ does come over there to the house, and then when he sees that Ray is not there, he's like, I'm gonna go get this food and I'm gonna be back. And she basically was like, no, why you leaving? Don't leave, stay. And he was like, no, I'm gonna come back. She was like, you coming back for real? And he said, yeah. And he said, she was acting a little weird to him, but he more so took it like she probably wanted him to stay there, because at least when he's there, he could kind of get the peace between them where they don't fight as much or whatever. So he leaves to go get his food, and by the time he come back, the cops and everything is there. They taking her in one direction. He's seeing the kids coming out looking all traumatized. He trying to figure out what happens, or what happened. And of course, that's when he finds out, and he blames himself at first as well for leaving, because he feels like if he would have still been there, maybe all of this wouldn't happen. Maybe, we don't know. We'll never know. Like I said, it's easy for anybody to say, well, she should have did this, he should have did this. What if I would have did that? For all you know, DJ, you could have also stayed there and end up being killed too. We don't know. Okay. And so basically, they kept having this thing of Ray was supposed to be leaving. We don't know that either, right? That's what they say. Now, in the meantime, we have this reporter that's talking, Miss Diane Diamond, and she just saying how things were so different then compared to now. She even says that if she would have been able to meet Sally now, she would actually apologize to her for the way that they framed, this whole story. At this time you had Amy Fisher, you had Tanya Harding, you had Lorena Bobbitt, you had OJ Simpson. Of course, most people are probably familiar with the OJ Simpson one. You might not know the other names. If you don't, Google them, okay? But these was different women at that time that had cases where it was either jealousy involved or some type of cheating or abuse, different situations where women just was like, I had it and I'm about to chop up some stuff, okay? And so they was kind of comparing it with that. And at this point, the prosecutor shows the evidence, right, that's showing that Ray was shot once in the stomach, once in the face. The stomach is what actually killed him. He bled out from there, right? And it's showing that Sally says, right, that she had 2 bullets and she reloaded them immediately with him coming after her, right? But the forensics is not showing that. And I think that's what got her in trouble, to be honest with y'all. That second shot and the fact of this forensics. This forensics made me give you the side eye, Sally. Because the forensics is saying that you took the first shot in the bedroom, but then you went back to the kitchen, but then you went back to the bedroom to reload and came back and shot him again while he was down. You were saying he was up and charging at you, but the trajectory of the blood and the fact that you had to have dropped the other shell out the gun before you could reload and put the second shell that you said you had in was found in the bedroom, girl. That's telling us something different. And so if I was that prosecutor personally, that's what I would have been focused on. I wouldn't have been focused on going after Sally and saying, oh, she not a domestic violence victim and she don't look like a victim and all of that. I would have been showing that, well, according to this, forensic evidence, it's showing you going back in the bedroom, reloading, coming back again and shooting this man while he's down on the ground and he was already not a threat to you. That's what I would have been focusing on. But in all honesty, after hearing that part of it and hearing that, you know what I mean, the second shot even happened and that it happened in that way, for me, that would have been what would have got me, okay? So I'm just putting that out there because I was like, girl, you ain't say that in the beginning, okay? Now, they also, of course, from her side, brought the psychiatrist in so she could break down everything to them, tell them how it works, tell them about how victims are not all the same, give them that insight. And basically, they really didn't take her into account that much, right? Then her daughter testifies. She breaks down on the, stand. And the daughter was complaining, saying that, she felt her mom's lawyer had got her off the stand too quick, didn't ask her the right questions. And her son was saying that he understands that he was too young to testify, that's why they didn't put him on the stand. But he felt like he wouldn't have been crying. He would have told the truth and he would have been a stronger, witness. I don't know how much he would have been because technically neither one of the kids was actually out there when it all first started. The daughter came out the second shot and the son came out way after. But could they speak to all the other incidents that happened prior to this? Absolutely. Could she speak to the fact that she was hearing him choking her mother and it was to the point that she knew the damn sounds? Absolutely. Okay. And I do, like I said, believe both kids. And so now Sally decides she wants to get on the stand and her lawyer was against it. Like, no, that's not a good idea. You shouldn't do it. She wants to do it and she does it anyway. And she regretted it after. And the lawyer basically was like, once she did that, he honestly thought she was going to get first degree murder. He thought it was a wrap because that gave the defense room to be able to open up the door for the Killer Sally videos and posters, right? Because he asked her, well, wasn't you known as Killer Sally? And she said no. And once she said no, and then she's also up there on the stand, kind of representing her and herself in that stern way, that militant way that she's accustomed to from the military, and that didn't come off good with the jurors at all, okay? And once she said no, he was able to bring out the poster that shows her literally standing there with the gun with the Killer Sally over her, poster on name over her, and hence Killer Sally, the series that is now on Netflix, right? And so, of course, if she would have been charged with first degree murder, that would have been 35 years to life. After 3 days of deliberation, the jury comes in, and this was after 3 years of her waiting, out on bail during that time. And now she is found guilty of second degree murder. They don't believe the defense. They don't believe this was self-defense, right? And second degree murder basically gets her 19 years to life. And of course, we know that it was 25 years that she spent altogether, that she came out in summer, 2020. And when she came out, basically her son, because it was a point where her parents was bringing the kids yearly to see her. And then it got to a point they didn't want to see her no more. I would say maybe between high school, college, they didn't want to see her no more. They both went into the military themselves. The son became an abuser in a relationship. He also began to abuse drugs. The daughter was in an abusive relationship. So history basically repeated itself. They both had PTSD. And the daughter does come and bring her son when the mom gets out for the first time to see and meet his grandmother, and this is her first time seeing her mom since 2004. She now finally got to see her in 2020, and she's like, I want her to have a relationship with her son and, with my son, her grandson and stuff like that, and be able to be there for him. Sally had been trying to go up to the parole board since 2011 and kept getting rejected every single time because they was like, you not a battered woman, you gonna have to admit to it, and she wouldn't admit to it, so they would keep denying her. And we was finding out that her daughter basically rather tell people that both her parents was dead than be like, having to tell them the story over and over and over of what happened. And her son just got to a point that he didn't want to see her at all, right? And initially, when she first came out, he still hadn't got to see her. He was talking to her on the phone, but because he was in programs and stuff like that, he couldn't go and be there with her. And so, of course, we found out Sally got a new man and Sally got a black man. Okay, one thing Sally gonna do is keep her a black man child. And they look very happy. His friends was looking like, do you know what she did? Okay, you okay with that? He like, yeah, I'm good with it because he married her, right? And we do see that when they had the wedding, her son came and walked her down the aisle. And I was really, happy to see that. Somewhere down the line, nobody won in this. Everybody lost. All of them lost. Unfortunately, Bray lost his life. She lost because she had to go to jail. And her kids lost because they both didn't have, parents there with them. And they both were traumatized and carrying all different type of issues, along with them. And so at the end of the day, I see them as the biggest victims of this, the ones that didn't ask for any of this and didn't make any of these choices, and unfortunately then carried, abuse and different things with them later on in life. And so I wish them the best, yo. He got to come and he got to walk his mama down the aisle, and I hope that they could find some type of peace amongst all this craziness, y'all. That is basically my thoughts on this. But you guys tell me, honey, did anything change for you with watching this whole series? Was it black and white to you? Did you feel like, yep, she did that and she had good cause and, they're wrong for the amount of time that they gave her? I feel like they're wrong for the amount of time that they gave her. I don't think she should have got as much. I do think she should have got something. And I think the second shot is what did her in. That's just my personal opinion. But I'm curious to hear what you guys' thoughts are. Did you feel like this was how it should have went? Or did you feel like, nope, that's not justified? She should have got off. She should have got nothing. Put it all in the comments. Let's discuss. Like, comment, share, subscribe if you are so inclined. Give me a wave. Let me know you came by. Put some flames up in the sky. All right, y'all. Till next time. Toodaloo.